I'm reading a report here from Fox News, which to me um, really highlights the sheer arrogance of police establishment figures in the American context regarding the Eric Garner case. Now, firstly, a little update about this terrible event in El Paso. There's another dynamic to it. I do believe the gun issue is a big part of that, but it transpires that the shooter 21-year-old white guy may have been involved in extremist groups online. So if that situation develops, I'll be speaking more about that. Yeah, so let me just read out this report. I want to read it all out so people have the context. The NYPD union on Friday tore into Mayor Bill de Blasio over his handling of the case of the officer charged in the 2014 death of Eric Garner, accusing him of creating a chilling effect. Over the last number of years since this mayor walked into City Hall, I've stood at this podium and said de Blasio's decisions will have a chilling effect on New York City police officers, a furious New York City Police Benevolent Association President Patrick J. Lynch told reporters Friday. While the criminal advocates have gotten what they want, the police department is frozen. And this union apparently represents 24,000 rank and file of New York City's finest, as they put it, has had a tense relationship with the left-wing mayor, particularly in relation to de Blasio's comments about policing and race, but that has deteriorated even further with his handling of the Garner case and Friday's decision by an NYPD judge to recommend the officer be fired. I remember watching that video. It was very disturbing. Garner clearly said several times that he couldn't breathe. It was an absolute travesty. The NYPD killed that man. I don't know how anyone can rationally dispute that. Um, and of course, Fox is putting a spin on it. Fox is biased. You know, Trump supporters can say CNN is biased, but when it comes to issues like this, Fox is extremely biased. After Garner refused to be handcuffed, Officer Daniel Pantaleo took him down using what prosecutors said was a banned chokehold. The officer's attorney argued that Holt used an approved seatbelt technique. Regardless, the man said he couldn't breathe. I mean, there has to be some human common sense in this. And Garner later died of a cardiac arrest. His family's understandably furious at the lack of justice, and it was one of the major triggers for the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, I've been critical of Black Lives Matter, some of the techniques they've taken, and I believe some of their collective shaming of all white people. But in terms of, for example, that case, I think they're absolutely justified in their anger. A grand jury declined to indict Pantaleo, and last month the Justice Department ruled against the Civil Rights Division's recommendation that charges be brought against him. But on Friday, NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Trials Rosemarie Maldonado recommended Pantaleo be fired. This was brought up in the presidential debate in Detroit. Kamala Harris looked at de Blasio and said if she was mayor, he would be fired. De Blasio's been very vocal about the case, but he hasn't went further than what he's done, and Pantaleo hasn't obviously been fired. I think it's he did say I know the Garner family at the debate in Detroit. They've gone through extraordinary pain. They're waiting for justice and are going to get justice. There's finally going to be justice. Um, and the report continues, approximately 20 officers followed de Blasio to Detroit, where they were protesting over pay, alleging that they are paid on average 30% less than other police forces in the region. Can't run the city, can't run the country, the officers chanted outside the debate. Um, Lynch, is obviously biased. He represents a police union. Someone like Lynch is never ever going to even fathom the idea that officers could be in the wrong. And this is one thing I find very hard to stomach about police corruption. They protect their own. And I think for a politician, they're in a difficult position because on one hand they are morally obliged to condemn something that what happens to Eric Garner, right? And yet if they do so, then right wingers say, oh, they're anti police. Well, this is what Lynch claims. Don't believe when they give you that story in the academy. Let's get out there and give one to the Gipper, quoting that famous film that Reagan was in, because they're not going to back you, he said. The Gipper's not going to be there, the mayor's not going to be there. Um, he also warned officers that the case shows they won't have the backing of City Hall if they are put in a situation where they have to put their hands on an alleged perpetrator. Well, damn right if it's that sort of situation. I mean, this to me just demonstrates the arrogance and corruption, moral corruption as well, of police establishment. I do not accept this irrational, stupid argument that if a politician criticizes police brutality, then they're not backing the police. It's this arrogant mentality the police establishment have that they can do whatever they want and not be held to account. This was blatantly wrong what happened to Eric Garner. And I don't think it's good enough to say, oh, well, officers are in a dangerous job. They are in life and death situations. We know that from what happened to those Dallas police officers. But I don't think they can use that as a sort of, any politician that criticizes us doesn't back the police. Politicians are there to serve the people, not just the police. And that's what these police departments need to understand. De Blasio's job is to serve 8.5 million New Yorkers, not just be a yes man for the police. And if I was mayor of a major city, I would back the police insofar as backing the fact that they're in a dangerous job, but I would never condone a situation like that, and de Blasio shouldn't. He's sort of, unfortunately, de Blasio's condemned by both sides. He's condemned by left wingers for not going far enough, and he's condemned by right wingers for being anti police. I don't believe that he is. I think it's an absurd, perverse notion that if a politician criticizes police brutality, then he's against the police. This, to me, is a pretty black and white case. I mean, the video footage speaks for itself. This wasn't a case where the officer felt his life was in danger. This wasn't a case where the officer thought he was dealing with an armed suspect. The video spoke for itself. And the Garner families never got justice. So this guy, Patrick J. Lynch, can be as furious as he wants. He's extremely biased. I mean, this guy, he could literally, a police officer could shoot a man point blank, totally unarmed, and this guy would still be saying, oh, he's a hero. No, the way I see it is just certain cops are just thugs in uniform. And until there is a change in mentality in American police establishments, until police officers start coming out and accepting there are corrupt cops, there are police officers who overstep the line, then I don't think anything's going to change. I think too many American cops just protect their own. It's filthy. It's filthy because when you have a situation of police protecting their own, no matter what the situation, then nothing will change. Until senior police officers start saying this is wrong, officers who do this not only should be fired, they should be in jail, then the anger and the polarization in the United States of America is just going to increase. And you can't escape the racial component. I do believe that CNN does race bait sometimes, but this is the fact is this was an African American man, a white officer. There have been examples of that situation in can't remember the state. It was one of the Midwest states, either Indiana or Wisconsin. I can't remember off the top of my head. The Australian woman, the white woman, killed by the black officer, that had a different outcome. But there is a racial component here, and until these corrupt cops start being held to account, then the good cops, those who are in it for the right reasons, who do protect the public, who are doing their job, they're going to be tarred with the same brush, and they can't really complain about that if they don't vocally condemn the corruption in their midst. The way I see it is officers who cannot bring themselves to recognize that there's a problem, they've no right to complain when the NYPD, for example, uh, gets a bad reputation. The same with the LAPD after the Rodney King thing. You could have 100 clean police officers who are doing their job, who are very brave, who help people all the time. But if they defend just one who is corrupt, then they cannot complain. And I think there is a rotten situation here where, like I say, the police protect their own. That is absolutely, it's the definition of a police state. and it's rotten. So I think de Blasio's right to um, to express support for the Garner family. Absolutely right. What sort of mayor would he be if he didn't? And I'm not saying I agree with all his policies. He's pretty left wing. I'm more to the centre. But you know, a mayor has to represent everyone. He cannot just represent law enforcement. Then he'd be a police commissioner. Then he'd be a police officer. He's not. He's a civilian. He's the mayor of a city of 8.5 million people. And when a citizen of that city is killed for committing a very, very minor offence, it's his job as a public representative to recognise what's happened there. So this guy's saying, "Oh well, the police won't have the mayor won't have our back." Damn right he won't. Why the hell should he? What Patrick J. Lynch is basically saying is he wants a mayor who will be a stooge to the police, who will give them whatever they want, whenever they want, and who will never question them. I really think this is a problem in the United States, and it infuriates me. And I'm no wishy washy liberal. When it comes to crime, I want criminals punished, but I do not think it's unreasonable to expect the police to do their job and to not cross a line. I mean, that is not asking for so much. What happened in this situation? This officer didn't fear for his life. Everyone could see that from the video. It would be a more complex situation if the officer had feared for his life. That was not the situation. That's what's so infuriating about Lynch's attitude. Shame on Patrick J. Lynch. As for the pay issue, well, if they are being paid less, that's certainly a legitimate concern. But I don't see how that connects to police brutality. So summed up, I think it's possible to recognise the police are in a difficult job. They do face dangerous situations, but just because a politician criticises police brutality doesn't mean that that politician is against the police. And it pisses me off that a lot of this has happened before with the NYPD. It's happened before with other police departments that unless politicians, mayors in particular, slavishly support them no matter what they do, then they're perceived as being anti-cop. Here in Britain, in fact, Theresa May got some slack for that when she was Home Secretary, because she didn't slavishly support the police every time. What police officers need to understand is that when people in their midst cross, I mean, if I was an NYPD member, I'd be saying, let's fire this guy, Pantaleo. He's brought negativity to the force. But what are they doing? They're backing him. So I don't blame the Garner family for being furious and with situations like this, I think Black Lives Matter is right. Where I think they're wrong is they don't condemn black gangs as much as they should.